love cooking pork belly with perfect crackling. Now, if you have not had perfect crackling every time, fear not. I'm about to teach you all the secrets that I know to get it perfect every single time. Now, one of the best things I can show you is how to take the stress out of getting the perfect pork crackling every single time. Now, this will work for pork belly, pork loin, even a pork shoulder. And as you can see, I've actually got pork belly straight out of the cryovac packaging. I have not even put it in the fridge overnight to dry out the rind. That is not always absolutely necessary. So let me show you my sneaky tricks. So what I've got here is just a little wet cloth under my chopping board, and I do that every single time because it just makes me safer and more efficient in the kitchen. So that's just your pork belly straight out of the cryovac. And as you can see here, the skin is actually very wet and it is also not scored. Now, that is not a problem at all. I'm literally going to give you 20 years of your natural life back by showing you how to cheat and get a perfect crackling every single time. Now, every time you get a pork belly, they do actually behave differently. So if you've ever had a pork belly that was perfect without you having to do anything, and the next one just wouldn't pop its crackling no matter what you did, that is not your fault. That depends on how much fat is actually in the pork belly and how dry that skin is. Now, like I said, this is straight out of the cryovac. What I've got is some paper towel. So just give it a nice pat down, and this literally should take you just a couple of seconds. And I'm going to teach you braising today. So braising is exactly like roasting, except we are adding a nice, sexy, tasty, delicious cooking liquid. Now, that could be a variety of different things. You can literally take your pork belly around the world. I'm going to show you a beautiful Moroccan or North African version today, where I'm going to use my lovely Ras Al Hanout or my culinary spray tan. Now, of course, if you don't want to do a Moroccan theme, you can go Spanish, where you can do the smoked paprika, chorizo gravel, maybe some lovely onions. I've also said maybe to use some pear slices and some onion slices. You can use beer or cider. And if you want to go for a French version, you could use a lovely red wine and garlic. So have some fun with your cooking liquid. The cooking method, however, remains the same every time. So you will be able to make this dish and make it nice and creative and versatile every single time. So this is a smallish piece of pork belly. It's about 800 grams to a kilo. That should serve about 4 people, but if they love pork belly, of course, cook a little bit extra. It's got a lovely amount of meat underneath and a nice small amount of fat under the rind. I don't like it when it's completely fatty. I always have a look and make sure I know what I'm buying. Now, with the braising, what we need is just a roasting tray, and a roasting tray that is going to be big enough to fit your pork belly in there. So if you've got a huge piece of pork belly, you're going to need a much bigger tray. And if you're just cooking pork belly for 1 or 2, get one even smaller than that. Now, to create the braising liquid, this is the easy part. We are going to take just some water, and that can be hot or cold water. If you're going to be carrying that for a little bit of a distance, cold water is obviously just going to be safer. I'm going to use a store-bought chicken stock, or you can use a veggie stock, and this literally is going to flavor our water at this stage. You could even use a stock cube if that's your preference. And now when you are promising your guests that you're going to give them a Moroccan or a Ras Al Hanout flavored pork belly, if you're only going to put a 1/4 teaspoon in, they are not going to taste or hear or smell Morocco. We really need to be quite generous, and at least 2 big tablespoons of that to get this flavor to really get into our pork belly. So as you can see, absolutely no stress here. We're going to get that stock, which is going to be a weaker version of a stock, because this is going in the oven for a minimum cook time of 1 hour and a quarter. So if you have a steam oven, you can sometimes speed that up, but I do recommend for the pork belly giving it some time. So the prep is very easy. It's still in one of my cookbooks, the Culinary Quickies books, because the method is very quick and the results do take a little bit of time. So we need at least 1 hour and a quarter in your oven. So now that I've got that lovely, sexy, flavorsome stock with our sexy fresh spices, so make sure you're using fresh spices. If you're using Old Spices, and I always say Old Spice is a men's deodorant, it does not belong in your cooking. So always sniff your spices and make sure you're using the freshest and the best spices that you have. Now, if your pork belly has come off the bone, you will notice that some of it might be a bit shorter and the other side might be a bit deeper. What you can do is, this is where we can use our lovely pear or onion slices, and this is part of the Moroccan flavor profile that I am creating today. So you can see I'm just being very lazy. I'm literally slicing right through that pear. We can do the same for the onion. I haven't even peeled it. Just to do nice thick slices, and I call that my pork belly high heel because it is going to keep it nice and high and dry. We do not want to submerge that pork rind that we have just sort of made dry with the paper towel. So if your pork is sort of drooping into the liquid, just prop it up with these gorgeous slices of the apple and the pear. And remember, those are going to cook down and actually be part of the dish later. So don't just use random things that you find lying around. They have to contribute to the flavor and the personality of the dish. So we've created that beautiful, flavorsome, bursting with personality cooking liquid, and now we have one thing left to do. The oven is preheated to about 220 degrees Celsius, and the last thing we need to do is salt the rind. Now, a lot of chefs will tell you that you have to put oil on there. I would only put oil on that rind if I was using a flake salt, but you know how much oil is in a pork belly rind. I like to use just a little bit of a sea salt or a table salt in my fancy little tea strainer, and then I like to show you how to do salt snow. Now that is less than a teaspoon of salt in there, and you will see that I'm going to use about a quarter of that, not even, to get a very even salt snow to cover my rind. Now the salt obviously is going to help pop that crackling out. Guys, this is just amazing, but these are the results you are going to expect every single time. Now, with the pork belly, minimum cook time 1.25 hours. What I did was I popped that in at 220 degrees Celsius. So if you had to do this at 220 just roasting, what would happen is your pork belly would really shrink up and it would have absolutely no flavor and personality, and it would literally just dry out. But with that sexy cooking liquid that we created by braising, it is going to absorb all that amazing flavor and just be absolutely glorious. Now you'll see after 1.25 hours at 220, your sauce will be delicious and thick, and we'll actually be able to serve that as part of the dish. So when you're wanting the crackling, this is when we tell the pork what to do. You saw me put it into the oven at the very bottom level of the oven. That is very important. We do not want to put that pork belly right under the grill. It is going to burn. Even the most expensive grill has hot spots. At the bottom of the oven, we're going to have a lovely long distance relationship with the grill, and it's going to pop that crackling out just perfectly. Now that was the easy part. If you are going to have guests that are going to be watching you while you carve this, this is a very handy trick to know. So on your meat carving board, what you can do is carve this confidently in front of them. I'm going to get a beautiful sharp knife. I'm also going to get my lovely tongs. Now this can be very intimidating when people are watching you, but if you first want to hear how gorgeous this crackling is, listen to this, guys. Absolute perfection. Also, what we've got underneath here is that lovely flesh is just bursting with color and personality, and as you can see here, it is so tender that it's just pulling apart just with the slightest touch of my knife. This is pork belly perfection. Now, of course, we can serve this with a wide variety of accompaniments. You can do it on a mash, you can do it on a gorgeous butter bean puree, but the carving is the most important part. If I try carve from this side, it is going to be a little bit intimidating if you don't have a nice serrated knife, but what I always do is I pop this over onto this side. I use my weight, and that is the easiest way to pop that into easy to serve pieces, and it looks very impressive in front of your guests when you're not crying and overthinking it. So there we have it, guys. Beautiful pork crackling. Perfect every single time. Use your grill. Make sure you get it nice and hot. And you'll live happily ever after in the kitchen. Enjoy, guys.